London Real, sponsored by Bulletproof Coffee.
We name some of these addictions as socially difficult, but the really biggest addictions of all in our society, we don't even think of as negative. An addiction to power and greed, they're the things that are causing the real problems. Look at the people, people who are doing the least positive for the society are the ones who are the most successful, and the ones who are doing the most for our society. The teachers and the nurses who do the most get the less, and the people with the addiction to greed who are just playing with the money.
Yeah. Do you think money's a drug?
I think that it all depends on your definition, but I think that it's a substance that is,
it's given too much power.
All I know is I live with some indigenous groups that share, and they see it as something to be very careful about. And I've lived with a number of groups now that when the money comes in, whereas previously, you're in trouble, I'll help you out. Now it's like, well, you're in trouble, well, give us a bit of cash. And you could say, well, that's got nothing to do with the money, that's just human nature. But what they have identified is that makes it easier. And not only that, the thing about money is it often, even if you're not sharing, if you're bartering or if you're exchanging, I'll look after I'll be a reindeer herder and you make saddles. Well, then you give me a reindeer and you give me a saddle and I'll give you a few reindeer. But that's kind of an uneven mix, so it keeps our bond. It's like, I'm always kind of in debt to you and you're always kind of in debt to me, so we have that human interaction. But as soon as you have money, it completely terminates it, and you and I can walk away. Which means that when we grow up in our society, it's like, okay, if I only got more money, I can be completely independent. And that's the goal. It's like we all aspire to this place where we can all live in isolation, and not isolation, but live independently. And we think that will make us happier. But of course it doesn't. What it makes is it means we don't have to deal with each other. Whereas actually it's good to deal with each other because that helps us to heal, it helps society, it helps us. But when we get all this stuff that I don't care, the milkman can come tomorrow, he could die in the next one, I don't care. It's just as long as I'm doing the money, it doesn't matter. I don't have to deal with him. There's no human interaction. And that's another form of separation. And all of these cuts in our human interaction, all of these separations that we're having in our community, in ourselves, our separation from nature. Money adds, it's just one of those other things that allows it to become easier to separate. And that causes the hole within us, the trauma, not the trauma, but that sort of longing for something, and so we fill it with an addiction.
A medication.
Whatever.
Yeah.
We all choose our different addiction. It's like, well, some will do this and some will do that and some will have power, and it all depends a bit on our youth. But that thing that we're missing, which is the love and contentment and community, and when that's not there, we want something else to fill it, but you can never fill that hole.
We had a guest on, his name was Charles Eisenstein, and he was talking about community, and he said you can't form community unless you need people. And he had this example where he moved to Chicago and he went to a suburb, and I moved recently to Belsize Park, and I was like, all right, we're going to have a community, and you have people over for barbecues and you hang out, and then they leave. And then because you don't really need them, they don't need you. You don't need them to look over your children. You don't need them for bartering. And so ultimately you can have this kind of fabricated community, an online community. But if you don't ultimately need each other back and forth, then, like you said, you kind of have this money, and I don't need you anymore.
He's an amazing man, Charles. He's an amazing man, and I've read a couple of his books, and I think he's an extraordinary mind, and he's a very influential writer.
Gift Economy is his, right?
The Sacred Economy.
Okay, Sacred Economy. Oh yeah, that's the book.
And his other book.
He's quite young, right?
Yeah. He's brilliant. He's very, very good. But the other thing I think he articulates very well is not only that thing about money sort of terminating relationships, but also, as you say, in the community, we don't rely on each other, but also we're not creating together. And we're all so used to being stimulated by these things that are created by other people. So we all go and watch the football. We're not actually playing football, we're watching it. Or we all go and play the computer game. We didn't create the computer game, we're playing it together.
Or Game of Thrones, we watch that.
Yeah, or whether it's a TV series or whatever, we're not actually creating. Or even if you just go and party, we're not actually we're not creating together. And so we're just participating in someone else's creation. And that means that, okay, so when I leave the party world, actually I didn't really have any strong bonds with any of those people at all. I just get replaced by the next one, or the guys watching football with me. Now, if I'm playing football, or if I'm playing in a band, or if I'm creating something, if I'm part of the creative process, then actually I'm a very intrinsic part of that, and I do have a real connection, and I'm in it. But if you're just observing, like most of us are, like I'd love to come home and just turn on the box and watch a film. But what I'd like to do, what I aspire to do in my life, is actually sit with a buddy and play on a fiddle or something, and then that's a much more joint creation, and I think that it builds a much stronger bond. But we have such hard lives. We just come back and just sit back and all I want to do is watch the box, and I get it, but I think that adds to our separation, and I think that Charles describes that really beautifully in one of his books.
This week, London Real presents Adam Scorgi, the producer of The Union, the business of getting high.
Stop. Watch The Union, then we'll have a rational discussion. But don't argue with me until you've learned some facts.
Marijuana is just a weed, and marijuana is worth more ounce for ounce than gold.
You're the pot guys, right? We did a pot film, right, that was thought-provoking and entertaining, but that doesn't make us pot guys.
Now he brings you the culture high.
Things don't add up, they don't work. We can't just keep banging our head against a brick wall and expecting it to change. We have to start looking at alternative models. What those are, who knows?
The Culture High is the documentary that will tear into the very fiber of the longest fought war of our time.
This Sunday, London Real presents Adam Scorgi, the culture high.
The only thing that really seems to make sense is that none of this makes any sense.